Happy Black History Month. Today I'll be talking about intersectionality and feminism involving Black women, because feminism is not only a matter of gender, but also race, class, and even sexual orientation. And the efforts from Black women to gain their freedoms and their rights has been a long and difficult struggle. And it entirely and fundamentally differs from that of white women, as white women have been working for women's rights for ages before Black women ever had the opportunity to. Because white women never had to fight for their own race's freedoms, for their own race's rights. Whereas Black women had been sidelined largely from advocating for themselves as women because of their dedication towards racial movements. So I will be referencing Words of Fire. It is an anthology on Black feminist thought. Just a couple excerpts, I promise, but I highly recommend you pick it up if you want to understand these topics a little bit better. So to start us off, I want to bring to your attention a court case from 1976 called de Graffenried v. General Motors, wherein 5 Black women filed a claim against General Motors citing racial and gender discrimination. Now, what predicated this event is rather important to understand the gravity of the situation. Prior to 1970, General Motors had never hired African-American women, though they had African-American men in factory positions and white women occupying secretarial roles. So after 1974, they had conducted a bunch of layoffs, and following the policy first hired, first fired, a lot of Black women had lost their jobs, inciting these Black women to file the claim. The court rejected their claim due to the fact that General Motors had African Americans in their employ and also women. So they didn't see a basis for racial or gender discrimination, highlighting the importance of intersectionality and feminism, because Black women or women of color do not only experience oppression based on gender, but also race. And it's important to see those as one thing. A common feature in white feminism is creating a divide between men and women and also highlighting the gender disparities. Whereas in Black feminism, it is largely political, and not only in a gendered capacity, but also, as I said, racial, sexual orientation, and also class politics. And I'll read an excerpt here. Feminism is not simply a struggle to end male chauvinism or a movement to ensure that women have equal rights with men. It is a commitment to eradicating the ideology of domination that permeates Western cultures on various levels. Sex, race, and class, to name a few, and a commitment to reorganizing U.S. society so that the self-development of people can take precedence over imperialism, economic expansion, and material desires. And that was by Bell Hooks in 1981. So it highlights the importance of not only dismantling the systems, but also addressing them as a whole. And Black women also advocate for aligning themselves with progressive men, Black men and white men alike, though they also, at the same time, doubly experience racism and sexism from both of these parties. Because it is not only white men and white women who oppress women of color or overlook their struggles, it is also men of color within their own communities, which we can readily see in how Black men protested against African American women's right to vote. As Alice Dunbar Nelson puts it, they preferred to hide behind the grandiloquent platitude of his white political boss. Seeing that men of color didn't feel comfortable with capitulating with racial discrimination because they wouldn't benefit, they felt more comfortable with aligning themselves with a facet of the patriarchy, namely gender discrimination, even if it was at the expense of other members of their community. And they gained power from it by upholding these systems and even perpetuating them further. As we can see in the civil rights movement, Deborah King writes, civil rights and Black nationalist movements of the 1960s and 70s, men quite effectively used the matriarchy issue to manipulate and coerce Black women into maintaining exclusive commitments to racial interests and redefining and narrowing Black women's roles and images in ways to fit a more traditional Western view of women, further aligning themselves with the Western patriarchal values, even at the expense of women within their community. Feminism is a movement to reform or dismantle oppressive and discriminatory systems in place to improve the lives of women with consideration to their race, class, and sexual orientation. And it's best to understand the historical implications of their experiences and not necessarily to speak for women of color, but to speak with them. And so it's not fair to say, and it's deeply anti-feminist to say, well, I don't experience that, or I don't feel that way. Because as a woman, you should never want any woman to feel that way or experience those things, regardless of whether or not you do. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. Again, this book is Words of Fire, an anthology on African American thought. And if you also want to revisit the re-victimization of African American women post-slavery and also their search for identity as African American women, I highly recommend Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I'll put it right here. Happy Black History Month and have a great day.